Cadet Jackson Miller slouched in his seat at the back of the Tactical Solutions chamber, trying to make himself as inconspicuous as possible. The holographic battle simulation playing out at the front of the room showed his most recent failure in excruciating detail, his simulated ship destroyed in the first 30 seconds of the engagement. "As you can see," Professor Zix Vaughn said, her 6 appendages gesturing in multiple directions simultaneously. Cadet Miller's approach demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding of quantum vector targeting. Again, a ripple of clicking sounds, the Arcturian equivalent of laughter, spread through the chamber. Jackson kept his eyes down, feeling the familiar burn of humiliation. The Galactic Defense Academy was the most prestigious military training institution in the known universe, accepting only the top candidates from each of the 27 Confederation species. Jackson was the lone human in his class of 200, admitted only because of the recent alliance between Earth and the Galactic Confederation. 3 months into the first term, he was failing spectacularly. The Vril excelled at multidimensional physics. The Arcturians possessed photographic memories and could process information at 3 times the speed of humans. The Zeth had evolved natural computational abilities that let them calculate complex trajectories instantly. Even the Breen, considered slow thinkers by Confederation standards, could outperform Jackson in every technical subject. Cadet Miller, Professor Zix Vaughn continued, "Perhaps you'd care to explain your reasoning behind this particular tactical disaster." Jackson stood, military straight, despite his embarrassment. "I was attempting to use the asteroid field as cover while I flanked the enemy position, Professor." "Indeed, despite the fact that we covered the limitations of subliminal maneuvering in dense spatial environments last week. Did you perhaps miss that lecture as well?" "No, Professor. I was there." Jackson had been there, desperately trying to understand concepts that his classmates absorbed effortlessly. He'd spent every night studying until his eyes burned, but it never seemed to make a difference. Then perhaps humans simply lack the cognitive architecture to grasp advanced tactical theory, Zix Vaughn suggested. Not unkindly, but matter-of-factly. "No shame in biological limitations, Cadet. Not every species is suited for command." The dismissal stung worse than the failure. As the class ended, Jackson heard the Arcturian cadet behind him mutter to his companion, "Why do they even bother including them in the program? Humans are barely out of planetary confinement." Jackson had asked himself the same question repeatedly over the past months. Earth had only achieved faster-than-light travel 15 years ago, while most Confederation species had been crossing the stars for millennia. Humans were the newest, least advanced members of the galactic community, and the gap in knowledge and capability seemed unbridgeable. That evening, as Jackson sat alone in the Academy's Arboretum, one of the few places where he found some Peace Commander Ella Athez, the Academy's deputy commandant, approached his bench. "Cadet Miller," she said, her crystalline form catching the artificial sunlight. "I've been reviewing your performance records." Jackson stood and saluted. "Yes, Commander. I understand they're unsatisfactory." "They are certainly inconsistent," she replied, gesturing for him to sit again. "Your technical scores are indeed the lowest in your class." "I'm aware, Commander," Jackson said, bracing for news of his imminent dismissal. "However," she continued, settling her crystalline form beside him, "your creative solution assessments are the highest we've seen in decades." Jackson blinked in surprise. "My, what?" "The unstructured problem-solving scenarios we embed in the standard curriculum. Most cadets don't even notice them. They're designed to evaluate thinking patterns rather than tactical knowledge." Commander Thez's faceted eyes studied him curiously. "You consistently develop approaches that no other cadet or even our faculty anticipates." "But I'm failing every actual test," Jackson pointed out. "You're failing at applying established Confederation tactical doctrine," she corrected. which is unsurprising given that humans haven't had centuries to internalize it. But raw problem-solving ability that cannot be taught, Cadet Miller. Before Jackson could respond, an alarm blared throughout the academy. Red emergency lighting bathed the arboretum. "This is not a drill," announced the academy's AI. "Containment breach in xenobiology. Level 4 quarantine protocols initiated." Commander Thez immediately activated her communication implant. "Thez, here. Status report." Jackson watched her crystalline features shift with concern as she received information. "Understood. Lock down all affected sectors." She turned to Jackson. "I need to join the emergency response team. Return to your quarters immediately." But as she hurried away, Jackson's tactical display implant standard issue for all cadets lit up with alerts showing the spreading containment breach. Whatever had escaped was moving through the academy's ventilation system, and according to the schematics, it would reach the junior cadets' quarters first. Without hesitation, Jackson ran not toward his quarters, but toward the youngest student's dormitory. By the time he arrived, chaos had erupted. A swarm of what appeared to be floating, luminescent jellyfish-like creatures filled the corridor, their tendrils emitting an energy field that disabled the academy's electronic systems on contact. Several security drones lay useless on the floor, their circuitry fried. A group of young cadets from various species were trapped at the far end of the corridor, behind the swarm. The creatures hadn't harmed anyone directly, but their disruptive field prevented communications and would soon affect life support systems. Jackson assessed the situation quickly. The standard response would be to deploy an EMP pulse, but that would also disable life support throughout this section. The security team would eventually arrive with specialized containment equipment, but by then, it might be too late for the trapped cadets. He needed a non-technical solution. Jackson noticed the fire suppression system on the ceiling, old-fashioned sprinklers that operated on mechanical pressure rather than electronic signals. Looking around, he grabbed a chair from a nearby study alcove and smashed it against the nearest sprinkler head. Water cascaded down, and the luminescent creatures reacted immediately, contracting away from the moisture. Interesting. They were avoiding the water. "Hey!" he shouted to the trapped cadets. "They don't like water. Can any of you create more water or similar liquid?" A small Aquilian cadet raised a webbed hand. "My species can expel stored water under pressure." "Perfect. Spray it at them to clear a path. The rest of you, stay close together and move quickly when there's an opening." The Aquilian began spraying jets of water from specialized glands, while Jackson continued breaking sprinkler heads, creating a corridor of falling water. The luminescent creatures clustered away from the moisture, opening a narrow path. "Now," Jackson called, wading into the water himself to guide the younger cadets through. "Stay in the wet areas." One by one, the junior cadets made it safely past the swarm. As the last one cleared the danger zone, the Academy security team arrived with specialized containment fields. "Cadet Miller." Commander Thez's voice cut through the commotion. "I ordered you to your quarters." Jackson stood dripping in the corridor, helping a small Vril cadet catch her breath. "Yes, Commander. I disobeyed that order." "Explaining yourself might be advisable," she said, though her tone suggested she already understood. The schematics showed the creatures would reach the junior cadets first. Standard containment protocols would take too long to implement. I improvised. Within hours, the luminescent creatures, identified as non-sentient Medusan energy parasites that had been collected for study, were safely contained. The Academy returned to normal operations, except for one significant change. Jackson Miller was summoned to the Commandant's office the following morning. Cadet Miller, the Commandant, an ancient draconian whose scales had faded to silver with age, regarded him with reptilian eyes. "Your academic performance remains the lowest in your class. "Yes, Commandant," Jackson acknowledged, standing at rigid attention. However, the Commandant continued, "Yesterday's incident has prompted a re-evaluation of our training methodologies. Commander Thez has been most insistent on this matter." Jackson remained silent, uncertain where this was heading. "Your technical knowledge is indeed substandard by Confederation measures," the Commandant stated bluntly. "But your approach to the containment breach demonstrated something our standardized training fails to measure adequately: adaptability and intuitive problem-solving." The Commandant rose, circling Jackson slowly. "Most Confederation species have evolved highly specialized cognitive functions over millions of years. The Vril can calculate spatial mathematics instantly. The Arcturians never forget a fact. The Zeth can process 12 separate data streams simultaneously." He stopped directly in front of Jackson. "Humans, it seems, specialized in not specializing. You adaptively integrate multiple cognitive approaches rather than excelling at one. You see connections where specialized thinkers perceive only separate domains of knowledge." "Permission to speak, Commandant?" Jackson asked. "Granted. I still can't calculate quantum vectors fast enough to pass the tactical exams," he pointed out. "No, you cannot," the Commandant agreed. "Just as I cannot breathe underwater like an Aquilian or process visual information in 12 spectrums like a Breen. But commanders don't need to be the best at everything. They need to know how to utilize the specialized capabilities of their teams while providing the integrative vision that specialized thinking sometimes misses." 1 week later, the Galactic Defense Academy curriculum underwent its first major revision in 300 years. Technical courses remained, but new classes were added focusing on adaptive problem-solving, crisis management, and what the Confederation species had begun calling human-style thinking, the ability to improvise solutions that cross traditional knowledge boundaries. Jackson still struggled with quantum physics. He never matched the computational speed of his Zeth classmates or the perfect recall of the Arcturians. But in the new Adaptive Crisis Response course, he excelled not just among humans, but among all cadets. "Interesting session today," Miller commented Zeth Cadet Zorlan, after a particularly challenging simulation. "I would never have considered using communication protocols to disrupt a quantum field. Where did you learn that technique?" "I didn't," Jackson admitted. "It just seemed logical that since quantum particles respond to observation, a concentrated burst of standard communication signals might interrupt their coherence temporarily." Zorlan made the chittering sound that indicated deep thought. "You humans, you make connections that shouldn't work, yet somehow do. It's most disquieting and valuable." By graduation day, Jackson Miller ranked first in his class in adaptive strategy and crisis response, having set new academy records in both subjects. His technical scores remained mediocre, but as Commander Thez had noted during his final evaluation, the Confederation has plenty of technical specialists. What we lack are integrative thinkers who can see beyond established patterns when those patterns fail, as they inevitably do in a universe of endless diversity. As Jackson accepted his commission as a Confederation officer, he reflected on his journey from worst student to recognized innovator. His true power hadn't been a hidden ability waiting to be unlocked, but simply the distinctly human gift of adaptable thinking that centuries of specialized evolution had engineered out of many advanced species. The human brain, messy, inefficient, but remarkably flexible, had turned out to be exactly what the highly specialized Galactic Confederation didn't know it needed.